Hello there, and welcome to Gooner U, where there are no degrees because the learning never stops. I'm Dove, a TA here at Gooner U, and my friend Keith is our stalwart distinguished professor of Arsenal and football studies. Enter our classroom as we discuss the week's news involving Arsenal, Premier League, Champions League, and international football, all from the perspective of a couple of Americans. This week, Arsenal returned from the international and FA Cup breaks, with matches at home against Fulham and away to Everton. Hello, Keith.
Hello, Dove, and a happy St. Totteringham's Day, belated St. Totteringham's Day to you and yours. And to to all who celebrate.
Nice. Yeah, it's not the anti-clinching that we've been focused on, but interesting.
It was made official this year. St. Totteringham's Day fell on a Wednesday when Spurs lost to Chelsea, dropping points and such, confirming that they will finish behind Arsenal once again.
Correct. So, yeah.
And then they managed on today being Sunday, to officially relegate Southampton. I suppose they have their revenge on poor Aaron Ramsdale. But
oh no, that's right. I forgot he was with them. Oh, that poor guy.
Yeah, although in Ramsdale's defense, Southampton's pretty awful, given they are currently well in the running for the worst record in the history of the league. But yeah, that's how the other side of the table lives. Isn't that right, Spurs?
Yeah, so meanwhile, I've discovered an entirely new way to get spoiled on Arsenal scores. So there's an app Apple introduced to the iPhone, I think it was last year, and it's just called Sports. And the app icon is like a mini version of a soccer pitch, but it covers all sports. And it's really super focused on giving sports scores. And in the Apple ecosystem, like in the news app and the TV app, they're all linked together and you mark what your favorite teams are. So I have Miami, the Cubs, and Arsenal in there. And I've wanted to start trying to follow baseball a little bit more. And overall, I have like more of an emotional connection to the Cubs, even though I have a more geographical connection to the Yankees, who would be my other Major League Baseball team. But so I wanted to start kind of following them more. And one thing that's really cool with the sports app that's done really, really well is whenever one of your favorite teams is playing, it'll show up on your lock screen and then also on my watch with what the live score is as the game is going on. So it'll like give you a little tap notification on your wrist when there's like a new run or like when something significant happens in the game. It gives you like text updates. Like I saw Miami was playing. I think that the game's probably over by now, but it had just started like a couple hours ago. And I saw like, someone's like Messi makes a throw in or something like that. It was just like giving you like play-by-play action. All this is great. I thought that I had it set up so that I wouldn't get a live activity for the Fulham match, and I didn't. It didn't show up. That was successful because I anticipated that, right? I had before deciding to use it for following the Cubs, I had live activities, which is what they call it when it shows the live score on your lock screen, where like updates in real time. I'd had that whole feature just disabled for the app, so there was no chance. But I turned it on for the Cubs. And then when I knew the Fulham match was approaching, I made sure that it was turned off for that match. And that was great until I accidentally tapped on the Cubs score like later that day or the next day before I'd watched the match. And it flashed the Arsenal score before going to show me the Cubs thing, triggered by me accidentally tapping on it. Luckily, it turned out that what I had gleaned was correct. It was the 2-1 final score against Fulham. But as what happens so often with me, like I saw it with a spoonful of possibility. Maybe I didn't quite see it right or something. So I was waiting to see if I was correct during the Fulham match that would be the final score. And it was, but I was able to suspend my disbelief a little bit on it, right? Or perpetuate my disbelief, I guess. But then apparently I had found the way to turn off live activities for one match while still leaving it on for all of Arsenal. And did not turn it off for the Everton match. And in fact, woke up after the game was over and like look at my phone after waking up. And on my lock screen, the first thing I see was the final score and it said final. Like there was absolutely no room for doubt. When I went in later yesterday and watched the full match replay, I knew exactly what the final scoreline was going to be, which we can talk about when we talk about the actual match. Like it's not how I prefer to do it, but it's not the worst thing in the world. It we'll revisit it, but there are worse ways to have entertainment spoiled than knowing the final score of a sports match. I've come to terms with that a little bit.
I'm still just laughing and giggling at the fact that the app's name is Sports.
You aren't familiar with how Apple names things. We've got news, mail,
I was about to say, having rattled off all the others, I'm not surprised. I mean, I suppose it's a significant improvement than if they called it Sports Ball. But
no, it's good. It's well done. Like, the stuff. It's a nice presentation. I mean, like, I was looking at the Miami match. It was interesting. I saw at one point Miami went up 1-0, and I saw a minute later it was back down to 0-0, and I knew, even without looking at details, offside, goal called back.
or VAR. I will say though, also I was amused that the notification you got was Messi makes a throw in, which I thought, that sounds about right for Apple and Major League Soccer.
That's cool. Like when you go into the app, you get live like possession and all those stats that you would want about a game. So even like if you even just had it up while you were watching the game, it's actually a nice second screen experience to accompany what you're watching. The problem with the Cubs is I can't watch almost any games without an MLB.TV subscription, which I'm not quite ready to make because I'm not committed to it that much yet. So this is the best thing I can do for following the team, is just kind of keeping up on the scores without actually watching them. But
I will say that as an MLB TV subscriber, this is not necessarily an advertisement, but if you're, I think it's about $120 for the season. Which, when you consider, and I use it to watch the Yankees, I will watch upwards of, or at least have it on for upwards of 100 Yankees games a year.
Sure.
Which means I'm effectively paying, a little more than $1 to watch a game. Right. Which, that's the beautiful thing about baseball, is it happens every day. And there are so many times you can just kind of put it on in the background while you're doing other things, or I'm making dinner. Like, it can just sort of be on, and I can just be brought in. I don't have to invest my attention into it in quite the same way. Yeah, so I find it to be a good value. Now, on your perspective, I warn you, though, they do local blackouts.
Right. So if I wanted to watch the Yankees.
If you wanted to watch the Yankees, there's a whole other thing for that. So, But
although, being a more technically minded person, I'm sure I could figure out a VPN workaround if that type of thing really bothered me. But I do have my familial cable connection that I use for watching NBC Sports, like for Arsenal too. Yeah. So I should be able to log into the Yes app or something if that were something that I wanted to do, like to get games.
Yeah, they have something new. Apparently, Yes MSG. I think it's Yes MSG and SNY. So the three New York sports networks combined, they have something. It's called the Gotham Sports app. So basically, the idea is you can subscribe to that and then get access to just about every New York area team. The little bits I've heard from people who are still in the area, I can't get it because I live outside of New York, the New York broadcasting area. The reviews I've heard of it have not been good. So you've been warned. That's all I can say. That's all I can say. I don't have the impression that that's a very good setup there. So,
yeah. I mean, it could work out if I got MLB.TV and watched like a dozen or possibly even fewer Cubs matches in the course of a year. It still might be a lower per game cost than how much I end up using my MLS or my MLS subscription with Apple TV Plus. Now, I have it, and I always want the option to watch Miami whenever they're playing. But do I end up watching that many per season to justify it? Maybe, maybe not. Like, I could see possibly justifying it in that vein. We'll have to see as time goes on.
And I'll also say for the MLB one, you get the subscription, you have access to everything. So pretty much anything that isn't being broadcast in the New York market, and probably some of the exclusive ESPN national broadcasts, you get that. And just about every minor league game is on there as well.
Yeah,
they do minor league broadcasts also, including Hudson Valley Renegades, which aren't going to be blacked out, even though
they're not televised at all. They're not televised.
This literally, this is literally the only place they're televised. They don't exist anywhere else.
Yeah. Yeah, so moving on to follow-up, I want to begin with the end. As we concluded, our last episode was discussing the 1995 Disney movie, The Big Green. For anyone who missed that episode, I highly suggest you see that movie, and you might enjoy our commentary about it. It was a fun time. But you signed off saying Texas Forever Street, and because you kind of snuck that in at the end, I didn't get to unpack that. I don't know. I don't think that's something from the movie. No. So what was that?
So that is a reference to I guess that was late 2000s, early 2010s TV drama series, Friday Night Lights.
I thought it might be that, yeah.
Yeah, based on the movie and then book of the same name, a slightly different, centered around high school football in quote-unquote small town Texas, though. As you watch the show, the town of Dillon, Texas grows increasingly larger as the season... I'll just say this, by the fourth season, he's coaching at the other high school on the wrong side of the tracks. In the first season, they don't have tracks. They're not big enough to have tracks. There's an entire joke in one of the first episodes about how they're the nicest restaurant in town, Applebee's. So anyway, yeah. But it's an interesting little bit of Texas-ness. Texan opinions on that may vary, but anyway, one of the line "Texas Forever" is given by many of the characters. In that case, mostly given by Tim Riggins, who's played by, I believe his name is Taylor Kitsch.
I know that name.
Good actor. Never quite broke into the big time stardom. He's done some supporting things. I believe, was it John Carter of Mars, that Disney adventure that didn't really pan out at all? I think was
right.
Real attempt at a starring role. Anyway, he gives the line "Texas Forever" on many occasions, and typically directed, at least early on, at the character Jason Street, who is one of his best friends. And so "Texas Forever Street." I don't have the hair, so you just imagine kind of running through like a shoulder length lock, Texas Forever Street.
Okay.
So
I was picturing something you could find on a map.
No, it's a very pseudo Texasy comment there. Seeing as the Big Green was, of course, there was Texas. There are quite a few Texas angles to that movie.
Yeah. Just a couple more really small points. So as I do, I cut in like clips of the movie that we talked about. So I was like, re-watching like the bits of the Big Green that we were talking about, especially for our shorts. So a couple things that I noticed on revisiting the bad CGI that I talked about is my least favorite part of the movie. The animations are not entirely CGI, and that's kind of funny. Like the opening title, for instance, the goat looks like it's like a 2D animation that's mixed in with the 3D titles of the words, the Big Green, right? Mm-hmm. That's kind of interesting. And then what was also weird is when they do the bouncing soccer ball, which was a CGI soccer ball, they did it only twice. It was within like 5 minutes of each other, because I was like scrolling through to try and figure out where to get the clip from to show it for the short. They're like 5 minutes apart. They didn't do it any other part of the movie. That was kind of strange, and that I think was all CGI. It looked like, but yeah,
that part, yeah,
that was weird. And then with what we both talked about with the zany camera speed at the beginning, we forgot to mention what was also really weird to me about that. And this is like in the opening scene of the movie where it's super sped up when the teacher is like running to grab the garden hose and spray the kids down. But then after she grabs the garden hose, the camera speed reverses and goes into slow motion as she's hosing them down, which just makes the whole thing even weirder.
Could have just played it all in normal speed. It would have taken the same
on average, it would have taken the same amount of time. Yeah.
I don't know if that's actually true, but I want to believe it's true.
Yeah, I think that's if we're at the math level of the kids in that movie, I think that we can certainly assume that it must be true.
Why would you assume that my math level is any better?
All right. Well, moving back to Arsenal, where we shall stay for most of the rest of this episode. It looked from the coverage this week like the Andrea Berta announcement was made official, right? Because they're showing him in the stands at both of the week's matches.
Yes, I thought I had seen somewhere one of those pictures, like when they sign a player and they're sitting there and they're at the table with the big club logo on the walls behind them, and they, pen to paper, everybody smiles into the camera. I think I could have sworn I saw one of those pictures with him in it. But either way, yes, that has been officially done. He will take over. I don't know when he officially takes over. I believe technically Edu's on leave. He hasn't actually begun working for it's not actually Nottingham Forest. It's the consortium of clubs owned by the Greek billionaire who owns, among other teams, Forest. But I don't know. I believe he's still technically officially an Arsenal employee, just on leave. And there's all sorts of bits and pieces about transferring jobs and that sort of thing. But yes, as far as I'm aware, Berta's there, had a very delightfully nice solid red tie up in the stand when he was up in the stands I saw on Saturday's game.
Right. And so, I mean, I'm guessing Atletico's season is still underway too, but he's probably in the same situation as Edu, where he's like on leave with them or whatever until the season's over or something like that.
Yeah, I don't know the official nature of where he is and all of that. I mean, yeah, their season is still ongoing. They were knocked out of the Champions League, but are still they still have the La Liga season to finish up, which I assume is another month and a half to run. Pretty much the same as the Premier League. I think Atletico is very much in the title race in La Liga. Actually, I haven't looked at their standings anytime soon or anytime recently, I should say. Wait, hold on, just pull it up. Yes, they are third, 7 points back of Barcelona. So they're kind of that would be a heck of a finish given they're third and Real Madrid's right between them. So unlikely. But still, another solid season for Atleti.
All right. So one thing we will certainly talk about when we get to the Fulham match was the very disconcerting injury we witnessed with Gabriel Magalhães, Big Gabby. It was one of these that we talk about where it's like, that's not good when it's a non-contact injury and he just has to wait an extraordinarily long time to get treatment on the field in that particular instance, but he was taken off in the first half. Do you have any update on his status now? I mean, we know he didn't play at Everton yesterday.
Yeah, he's done. He is having surgery. He'll undergo surgery on his hamstring, and that is the last we will see of Big Gabby until August.
Oh no.
Yeah. So there was some talk because he played for Brazil during the last international break, but picked up a yellow card in their first game.
Right.
And so as a result, was suspended for their second game against Argentina, where they got thumped. The coach got fired because Brazil has higher expectations than that. But also, and by the way, Argentina qualified for the World Cup officially, as did Iran. We didn't have that last time we were able to speak.
Yeah.
But yeah, so the idea was that Gabriel would come back, and having not played quite as many minutes as perhaps some of the others, some of the other guys who had been out as long, he'd be a little bit fresher. And so here we are during this game. Was it like 15 minutes in?
Yeah.
Does his hamstring now? From an Arsenal perspective, this sucks. This is not the first time we've heard about hamstring injuries. Apparently, hamstring injuries are consistently around the league. And so even though there's a sense of perhaps a bit of overplay, Gabriel is not the most, there are plenty of guys out there who have more minutes than Gabby this season, at least in the Premier League. But you combine that with having played, obviously, he was with Brazil for the Copa America, which even if it's not game time, is still travel, is still practice, is still all of those things. And you add in the workload here. And so apparently across the league, they are seeing a lot of hamstring injuries, which in a lot of cases is overwork. I've seen some other speculation, and I don't know enough. I'm not that kind of doctor to say for sure how medically sound this is, but I've seen some speculation that the surgery on the hamstring is more radical in the short term, but is apparently becoming increasingly a proactive step, in part because the surgeries are so much better now. The idea being that if you surgically repair the injury, yes, it'll take a little bit longer to get back, but the chance of re-injuring it is substantially decreased as opposed to before. So many times you would just rest and rehab, ice it up, or obviously there's a few more things than just that, but you would rest, rehabilitate, and then try to come back and continue to play on a muscle that was, damaged essentially, and perhaps had never been fixed. So theoretically, the surgery might, hopefully, I think the idea is that it would in the end make him stronger than he had, or at least stronger than than without it. So yes, it stinks that we won't have him for the rest of the season. Obviously, for the Madrid game on Tuesday, or the Madrid tie starting this week. But if long term this ends up being better for him, I understand it, and and as we sort of talked about before, right, from the player's perspective, your careers are short. the last thing you want is to wind up with that kind of niggling injury that never seems to go away. Which is, there are always players who deal with that sort of thing.
Jesus, dealing with that. Yeah.
Well, I mean, with Jesus, I wonder too about. I mean, some of it's been his knees, and Jesus. I mean, Tomiyasu might be another example, or you could go further back to some players you may not recognize, but names like Michael Owen, some quality players whose careers were. Whose careers were hampered by injuries that essentially never healed as well as they would need them to. And so perhaps you hope the surgery ends up stronger long-term effects or stronger long-term assistance to Gabriel. But yeah, that means we're down a center back for the rest of the season.
Well, and like what was really occurring to me during the Everton match yesterday, I mean, it's not just his great abilities as a center back, but as a scorer, as one of our top scorers, just the headers from corner kicks, right? Like our corner kicks were way more impotent yesterday than they would be when his tall cranium is helping to send the ball into the goal,
Yeah, heading the ball's a skill, and scoring goals with your head is a skill, and he's clearly picked it up and has gotten it. And, and William Saliba runs around. We've talked about some of the big boys we have up front, Marino and Declan Rice and all of that. But yeah, I mean, he's not irreplaceable. Although, to be fair, I think he was very much in the conversation at this point. I think it's very fair to say he's in the conversation for Player of the Year for Arsenal this season. He may still be, depending on how the rest of the season plays out. That might just demonstrate his value. But yeah, he's been having a fantastic season, and it's disappointing that we won't get to see him finish, or we've seen him finish it out with a month and a half with a little more to play.
But yeah, like the counterpoint to like should he or shouldn't he have a surgery too? I mean, like if you look at Saka was a hamstring injury too, I think, right?
Yeah, but he did have a surgery.
Oh, he did. Oh,
yeah, but remember he's been out for 3-4 months.
Well, 4 months, and that's what I was going to say. So
yeah.
I think it was Martinelli also.
Yeah, he had something as well. Yeah, I mean,
I'm trying to get a sense, like for somebody who had the more natural. Like, I'm trying to think because we've had a few hamstring injuries. If somebody didn't get the surgery, like how long was it before they were back? With like a month and a half left in the season, like he might have been beyond that window anyways. For no matter what he did, his best option was waiting till August.
Right, but I do also think that. Increasingly that this sort of that it's becoming the first option is the surgery, sort of the point. So I mean, it may have been a case where in the past, and again, I'm not remembering timetables and I'm having trouble thinking of specific examples where you try to rest and rehab the injury, and okay, you lose Gabriel for the Real Madrid tie, but if you get past Real, maybe you start to think, oh, could he be back for the semis? Or if we made the final, could he be back for that? And that is it, and again, some of that's contingent on the season. Like with, if he's hurt and you're thinking to yourself, oh, a little rest and rehab, maybe we do this. And all of a sudden you're out to Real Madrid and then you lose to Everton. We lose to Brentford on Saturday. And then it becomes a case of, you know what, we're not winning anything. Don't worry about it. Shut him down.
Yeah.
Because there are times you can see, and you'll see it in the Premier League right around the same time we're hitting the end of the regular season in the US, the NHL, the NBA. Teams are making those kind of decisions. Look, we're missing the playoffs. It doesn't matter. Just shut it down. Take your rest. Get ready. Be ready for training camp next season. So there's a little bit of that kind of conversation too about where you stand. The league isn't done. But it's hard to look at it and say, like, it would require a massive overhaul of recent results for us to come back and say, yeah, we've got a real shot to win the league. And, I don't know. We've talked about this a little bit. I don't necessarily see it coming. And we'll talk about this as we get into the games for this week. You can see how some of that is playing into the way Arteta is approaching the games as they come now.
Right. To be continued. So, so why don't we jump into the Fulham match? The victorious one and also first chronologically. So we'll start there. But so this was a match where I felt like we had a lot of momentum and energy going into the game, like in the beginning of the first half. A lot of attempts, kind of trying different things. And then, like you said, it was about 15 minutes in. That was when Gabriel Magalhães went down. And like I was starting to talk about before, I mean, it was really weird the way it ended up happening. Like, he went down on our defensive end. Play continued, and I think at the beginning, I think we had the ball, and because we had the advantage and we're trying to score, I think we didn't play it out for him to get attention because we thought that we might have a chance. But then the ball ended up back with Fulham, and they ended up back on our half, and we're basically playing around Gabriel while he was on the ground before eventually, I forget what happened. I think the ball went out naturally or something, but it was a couple minutes before they were able to take him off the field, which was interesting. I haven't seen that exactly happen like that before.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, some of it depends on the teams involved. Some of it depends on the injury. The referee has the directive that if it's a head injury or if they suspect a head injury, they'll stop the game. Legs, it kind of depends. And obviously, the Fulham and we've done this too. Fulham is entitled to continue an attack. Like, if they're worried, like if they have the ball and have a chance to attack, they do not have to put the ball out of play. And we can do it as well. We can just put the ball out also. But if they're moving, and look, we've seen this. How many times have we seen it before, right? A player has gone down. It's not an injury. They just got a tackle or something, and they just a little slow to get up, and they just need to shake it off, and they'll be all right. And you don't stop the attack for that just because it's your teammate. If you've got something going on, you go with it, and we'll deal with that the other bit later. So yeah, it could just be a case of he goes down, and it just the confluence of things happens, and he just doesn't get up, and it's only then you send the physios out, and it's like, this is really not good.
Yeah, so they worked on him for a couple minutes and then helped him off the field, and we ended up with Kivior instead, which we saw again later in the week against Everton. Kivior stayed in the center back role, which was interesting. I don't know if we seen him centrally like that much this season.
A little bit, not much because we've had Gabriel and Saliba so much. I think he's played a couple of games when Saliba's had to come out for a couple of the red cards he's picked up this season. Kivior had a busy week, and I think it's fair to say he did not cover himself in glory in this one. And look, Fulham is a good team. Like, they're right up there in the mix for European spots. I think we had a draw at Craven Cottage earlier this season. They beat Liverpool earlier today. Yeah. So yeah, they're a quality team, and so I'm not gonna sit here and just rag on Kivior for having a bad day. But he's certainly, it's not as if Fulham stinks. They're a good team, and we it's a tough situation for him to come into. I think it's fair to say.
Well, yeah, so, definitely a strong team. I think we did well to score a couple against them. The first one, the return of Mikel Merino, scoring on our front line again, our ersatz striker. Nice assist from Waneri, too, and, it helped. He had a very helpful deflection that kind of obscured the direction from the keeper, and that helped, but...
Yeah, I mean, Marino's had 5 goals in 8 games. For a guy who's not a striker, and we've talked about some of his limitations. But in terms of the return, like, if we had signed a guy in January and he had produced 5 goals in 8 games, we would have been pretty happy with that, all things considered. Depending on who it was we had signed, right? We've talked about how many draws we picked up this season. It's been a lot. It's been too many, frankly. But he came on, got 2 goals against, that was Leicester, and that was a game we were creating nothing, and he gets 2 goals. So, obviously an important goal in this one to grab the opportunity. It's a deflection, but the ball's going on goal anyway, so it still counts. It's not an own goal, so another one for Merino. And another solid first half from Waneri.
Yeah. Did you feel? I kind of felt like after Gabriel got taken off the field and Kivior came on for him, it felt like we were a little lost. Like, kind of like all that like strength and momentum we started off the game with, it kind of like ebbed a little bit until Marino kind of brought it back. Did you feel that way?
That's so. Admittedly, my watching for the first half was a little in and out for work related reasons. But I have to say that wouldn't surprise me. We know how important Big Gabby is to the team in general. Mm-hmm. We also know, and again, not a shot at Kiwi, but there is a step down between what he can provide for the team and what Gabriel does. And we talk about the center backs in terms of playing defense and, stopping opposition players and how they've marked certain players out of the game. Part of what they also do, though, is they're part of the cycling with Raya and the keeper and pushing the ball forward or starting to recycle opportunities when the ball, when we can't quite make the play we want to offensively cycle back, and the center backs play a big part of that. So he does a lot for the team in that regard. And you got to think there's a mental side to this, too. I mean, we talk about how exhausting it is for us as fans, right? Oh, another player is hurt. Oh, no, another player is hurt. In a group chat with some of the Arsenal guys here, and someone made a joke, hey, check it out. They did it again, another Arsenal shirt, and they just showed Gabby in a hospital gown. It was his face Photoshop of someone in a hospital gown. So, we all get that, but you got to think it's on the players' minds, too. And to see a guy like that, who's a fiery player, an emotional leader on the team, and also just another one of our guys goes down with an injury, and it doesn't look very good. Yeah, that's going to unbalance them a little bit. That's going to be a difficult thing, mentally to deal with. And so, full kudos to Wanyeri and Marino for finishing off the opportunity and, more importantly, giving us the lead. We've talked about how if we don't score early on, it does increasingly feel like a struggle as the game goes on. So to get the goal, obviously coming close at halftime, but to get a goal 1-0 changes the entire tenor of the game, especially as you get in, then you get halftime to sort of sit and think and, make some tweaks and adjustments and come back out for the second half.
Yeah. And it was like, especially in the first half and even really for most of the second half, it just seemed like every time they got near our goal, our defense was just on top of them immediately. Whatever they did with it, it just didn't even have a chance to go anywhere near the goal. Just deflected off of a defender's legs like right away. And I wasn't worried when I saw that happening,
And we've talked about this, right? We're a very strong defensive team. And a lot of that stems from, because it does feel like you see teams give up goal. We see other teams score against us in such limited opportunities. And so it feels like, is the defense really that good? Part of the reason they have so few opportunities is because of the general strength of the defense. So, and Fulham Fulham can be dangerous. Fulham has some players who are very good going forward, who certainly can score goals, who've gotten a lot of good results this season. But overall, I think they were, and a lot of that's just us controlling possession as well. So,
yeah,
I mean, all things considered, and this becomes even more apparent once we get to the weekend's game. It's good that we win these games, but you can also tell we have bigger fish to fry.
Yeah. So I think if we were to move on to the second half, I think really there's one key event in the second half, which was the return of Bukayo Saka. Have you ever seen somebody return in a more forceful fashion?
I mean, it is one of those things that feels sort of storybook, but it does happen a lot, especially for a player of his ability. Here, listening to some Arsenal people, and they said it was him coming on got probably the largest cheer of the night. Second largest cheer of the night. Second only to him scoring a few minutes after coming on.
Yeah.
The only real point of comparison would have been Thierry Henry, who left Arsenal, I want to say 2007, 2008, somewhere in there, left for Barcelona, played a few years at Barcelona, went to New York, played in MLS with the Red Bulls, came back to Arsenal in the January period on a brief loan, scored a winner in an FA Cup game, and it was kind of one of those, it was an exciting moment, it was nice to get the win, but more it was just the emotional release of seeing one more big goal from the king, right? And so the Saka goal has a moment of that to it, a great moment, and really just a fantastic play all the way around.
Oh yeah. I mean, almost more impressive. Like Saka's header was nice.
Oh, it's about as easy. It's about as easy as a goal he'll ever score. I mean, he basically just has to kind of nod it forward because
he got into good position.
Yeah.
But I mean, the cross from Marino was so well placed, and then the way that little heel flick that Martinelli made to position it just like that for Saka, so skillfully done, really incredible.
Yeah, he was. Yeah, and I'll say this: Martinelli had a really good day. We haven't mentioned him yet today, but I thought he was very good. Just absolutely tortured Fulham's right back.
Right.
Yeah. Just a good day all around, and good for him, just in terms of his quality of play, but also psychologically the way he was playing. And so,
creating so many opportunities the whole game.
I'm convinced that heel flick was intentional. Like that, it kind of has that look of, I'm not going to be able to score because of my position. I'm just trying to redirect the ball so I keep it going across the goal.
Yeah, keep it in the air. Yep.
And Saka's there at the back post just to knock it in, and it ends up being 2-0. And it's just, a good moment. Glad to see him back. Glad to see Martinelli getting better. Again, Marino picks up is another important moment for Marino. Honestly, I thought that it's a great moment. Everybody cheers. Everyone has a good time. And more importantly, we're up 2-0. Yeah, they got one back at the end. Yeah, they had a couple of opportunities.
Very end.
A bit fortunate, but at the end, we were the stronger team. Certainly, from what I saw, we were the stronger team, and we were able to walk out of the game with 3 points. So, welcome back from the break, everyone.
Yeah, right. So let's head over to Everton. So this did not have quite the same ending as Fulham. It potentially could have resulted in 3 points, except for a certain controversial call at the very beginning of the second half. This was, of course, Miles Lewis-Skelly. Who was it that he tangled with?
That was Jack Harrison.
Okay. So, very protracted contact between them that started well outside the 18-yard box, kind of arguably continued into the 18-yard box. You could almost say that he had gotten the better of Miles Lewis-Skelly by that point, and Skelly was going down and made minimal contact on him inside the 18-yard box. How do you fall on that? Is that a penalty to you? Is that a foul that happens within the 18-yard box to you?
Yeah, I mean, let's start with, I think, what is a fair accounting of what happens is that Miles gets beat, and he commits a foul trying to recover from that. And it's one of those where on some level you almost can't be mad at the penalty being given because there's clearly a foul given because he gets beat and has nothing else he can do for that. Now, having said that, the more you watch the replay, the more I watch that replay, he obviously commits the foul outside the box. I have a hard time seeing the contact in the box that would lead me to say it's a penalty. And, the point of comparison some people around me were trying to make was in basketball, they call it a continuation foul, where if you're fouled while sort of like starting your shooting motion, then you continue your shooting motion, therefore it's a shooting foul. They don't have continuation in soccer, in football. It's where the foul was committed. To me, the foul was clearly committed outside the box. There is a tiny bit of contact in the box, but I just don't know about that.
That's incidental. It's like he's falling over and he bumps into him as he's falling over at that point. But
yeah, I mean it's a gift to Everton. I don't think that's completely unfair to say. It's a bit of a gift for Everton, and Ndiaye, puts it in good for them for taking advantage of the opportunity, which is especially a good opportunity because they were offering nothing going forward yesterday. Yeah. Everton had really nothing going forward. They're not a particularly good team. They're going to sit back in the low block and dare you to break them down. And it's kind of shocking when we did get our goal back in the first half. It came on the counter.
Right.
A good run from Sterling, good finish from Trossard.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was
a nice play. That's probably one of the best moments we've seen from Sterling so far this season.
Had a really good driving run. And Trossard as well. Another nice finish. He's had kind of an up and down season as well. So nice to see him get that kind of finish. I mean, I'll say overall, I thought the refereeing was pretty poor. I know we don't want to talk about I hate that we're talking about the referees. I thought it was really just poor, inconsistent. I mean, Trossard has a play where he's going in the box. He's clearly if he goes to ground, they probably would have called it a foul, but he's able to keep his feet, and so he gets a weak shot off instead. I'm not sure that's really better overall. Was it O'Brien twice clearly interferes with Raya, makes contact with him as he's trying to kick the ball away. Where is this isn't a gray area in the rules.
No, and it was funny. The commentators were saying at first that he wasn't looking when it happened or something, but on the replay, it certainly looks like he was facing in that direction.
Yeah, and again, it's not this isn't the referees cost us 3 points. How dare they? It's bad. It's inconsistent. And I think it's fair too to ask, because of course, the role of VAR. I mean, they reviewed the penalty, obviously.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know how you review that and say I guess the more you can watch in real time, I get it. When he went down in real time, it was like, oh crap, that's a penalty. And then you watch the replay, and I'm like, I just don't know that the contact's there. To justify a penalty. It's clearly a foul. It should have been a free kick.
Right, it should be a free kick just outside the 18-yard box, which might have resulted in a goal, but not as clearly a nearly foregone conclusion as a penalty is.
Yeah, it's an and so again, it's kind of like, well, what's the point of VAR then?
Right.
Again, I don't think we talk about this every time. I'll keep saying it. I don't think the referees have really worked out collectively the role VAR is supposed to play. And because they haven't really figured that out amongst themselves, they're not sure how it should be used.
For anything other than offside. Offside, they've got figured out, apparently. But
right.
Everything else, it's like, no.
Yeah, which is why offside theoretically will be taken away from them once we get to the semi-automated version. Assuming they can never get the technology right for that, because that's clearly impossible. I don't know. Obviously, everyone else that's doing it must be doing it wrong for some reason. I don't know. Anyway, it's okay. It's only the richest league in the world. I'm sure they can spring for a couple cameras in the stadiums. But yeah, it's just it's frustrating too, because it's just so inconsistent. And again, Everton probably has a few moments in the game they're shouting about too, and I don't blame them. I mean, it's poor work, and it just kind of. And it's frustrating, especially because of the role it plays in this case, obviously, with us dropping points. Now, again, we talked about this a little bit. We'll kind of get into this more in just a moment. I mean, we're recording on Sunday. Liverpool lost earlier today to Fulham. They dropped points, and we gained 1 point on them, as opposed to perhaps 3 points being gained on them. Now, look, they'll never say it. They'll never admit it. But I cannot watch the way that game was planned out by Arteta and say to myself, they're acting like they still have a shot to win the league. That's not where their priorities are right now. And it's Fulham, they're playing to win the Fulham game. That from the moment that lineup came out, this was obviously everything here was being done with one eye on Real Madrid on Tuesday.
I'd say more than one eye. But yeah, so we basically rolled out with what you might see in the first rounds of the League Cup, where we're playing against a League One or Championship team or something. But then there was a seemingly coordinated set of substitutions. So we start off, we have the 2 halftime substitutions where we had who were the first that came on?
Saka came on for Nwaneri and
Martinelli on for Sterling.
Yeah, Martinelli came on.
So they came on at halftime, and then it was at the 60th minute or so. It was almost exactly an hour in. We got our next substitution, and then it was at 75 minutes. It was just very much like this is the plan. We're going to have these players play this number of minutes, get them a little bit of a run out, but we really don't want anything happening to them before Tuesday.
Right. And you look at the lineup overall, I mean, Sterling, Trossard, Wanyeri as your front line. You know, Sterling starting says a lot, frankly. And frankly, so does Trossard starting. We know with Martinelli back, he's not really the preferred choice in the central forward position. You know, Declan Rice and Merino played, although Merino wasn't as the striker, which is kind of interesting. Jorginho in the midfield instead of Thomas Partey.
Mm-hmm.
In fact, Partey spent the whole game on the bench. He didn't come in at all.
Right, Tierney did, which was interesting.
Well, I mean, in Jorginho's case, he came off from our Odegaard, right, which was obviously getting a few reps under his legs. But then in the back line, left to right, Lewis Skelly, Kivior, Saliba, White. You know, Lewis Skelly had a mixed game. Obviously, giving up the penalty, even if it's not a penalty in our eyes, he still gets beat and clumsy challenge, which is something. He's young. There's still a lot of opportunity for him to improve his game, but you do worry a little bit about him picking up a reputation. I'm not super concerned about it long term, but it's the kind of thing you want to be careful of because, as we saw with Granit Xhaka, right, reputations can linger.
In the eyes of the officials in particular,
right. I mean, and you know, Kivior is there in his center back, and we talked a little bit about the Fulham game. It wasn't so great. Apparently, one place had him as man of the match for this game for Everton. I didn't see anything in his game where I said to myself, "Oh man, Kivior's been awesome today." But he was fine.
He had a couple decent moments that I noticed, but not enough for me to call him man of the match.
Which is good to see. William Saliba was William Saliba. And then Ben White has a good run out there on the right side and was replaced by Jurriën Timber later. I will be very curious to see. Obviously, the speculation is going to turn, of course, to Tuesday. To me, defense is the most interesting place to think about. How are we going to line up with, Lewis, with Kivior and with Gabriel being out? I could see my initial guess is you might see Saliba and Ben White as the center backs. You remember Ben White played his first season with Arsenal as the center back.
I did not remember that.
He was a center back the whole first season when he came in, and then went out to right back last season, where it turned Saka and Odegaard were unstoppable. But that leaves you with Timber on the right, and then I suppose Lewis Skelly is going to get the start on the left. I mean, all due respect to Kieran Tierney and Oleg Zinchenko, Lewis Skelly is clearly the best of the left backs right now. Probably Rice, Partey, Merino in the midfield. Then you got Martinelli, Saka. Maybe you see Merino up front and actually put in. I forgot Odegaard there in the midfield. So I mean, I think you can sort of see the elements of that lineup for the Real Madrid game in the players who both didn't play in this one, but also in the players who are coming in this one as well.
Sure.
I think they've clearly been building for Saka to start. So we saw him with the planned substitution. White and Timber getting some rotation there on the right side. Odegaard getting some time. Martinelli getting the rest. I was a little concerned. There was a stretch there in the middle of the second half. I don't know if you felt this while watching, where it felt like to me that the intensity was picking up a little bit. The physicality was picking up a little bit. I wasn't too happy about that.
Well, right, because we don't want anyone to get hurt. Yeah.
Right. That was kind of like, I kind of was like, I was kind of shouting to the Arsenal guys, like, of course, because they can hear me, through the TV, right? But it's sort of like, step on the ball, take some of the air out of this game. Like, let's not do this. Not because I'm like terrified of Everton in terms of like them, riding a wave of emotion in the final game, in the final games at Goodison Park, and what. More just the last thing I need is some Everton guy gets a hot head and 2 foots Gabriel Martinelli,
right?
Like that's not what we need right now. So, it's very strange to think about. Obviously, this is our 11th draw of the year. That's
a lot.
Well, it's too many. I mean, for a team that sees itself as competing for the title, 11 draws is far too. We've lost 3 times in the league this season. That's nothing. That's a very good record on that score. but the 11 draws.
I know.
It's just too much. And
that's what's killing us, yeah.
I mean, and again, today was another example. We scored a goal. We were up and we dropped points from a winning position. And again, we can talk about dodgy refereeing, the red cards we talked about, some of the injuries we picked up. I mean, we can sort of explain it away
mm-hmm.
in the sense that, like, you can point to these individual situations, but it is something that kind of is like, it's frustrating, for a team that is so good defensively, and we are very good defensively, to concede goals like that is disappointing, and is the kind of thing I imagine in the offseason, some of the conversation that'll take place is going to surround that, how they're going to deal with that, and how to make sure that doesn't happen, and then, of course, how do we turn those draws into the wins in the numbers you need to compete for and ultimately win the title.
Right.
Maybe the answer to that question is Alexander Isak. Or maybe it's Victor Gyökeres. Benjamin Sesko.
Yeah. I heard Kevin De Bruyne is leaving Manchester City. Too expensive.
No, he's leaving Manchester City because he's shot. I mean, listen. I've been a big fan of his game. I've said a lot of nice things about his abilities and all that. He ain't that guy anymore. He's going to go to Saudi Arabia or maybe MLS to come to the US. He's not going to. No, he is not going to play. What we need. I mean, so much of the attention is going to focus on a striker. It's going to focus on a player going forward. But I mean, Jorginho and Partey are both out of contract this season. There was the movement towards Martin Zubimendi. There might be a few of the defenders we have to shift around. Mm-hmm. We might be looking for another attacking player because, of course, Sterling. We're going to need a backup keeper, although those are actually not that hard to get. There's going to be some moving parts for this team in the offseason, and one of the things we sort of have to push ourselves towards is how do we turn those draws into wins? And the answer really is scoring more goals. That's, right. Look, again, it's so strange. On some level, this season, as of this point, is a triumph. For the injuries we've been facing, for the players we've been missing, we can talk about dodgy refereeing decisions, fine. In the midst of all of that, we're second place.
Right.
And we're pretty solidly in second place. Like, it would be a shock for us to finish in third. Or lower at this point. I mean, we are about as nailed on to a Champions League spot as you can be.
And we're only in second place behind Liverpool, who's having like an all-time historically good season too.
Who has been having a very good season in their own right. Really, the historic part of it is more Mo Salah having just an absurd season on his own right. But yeah. So in that sense, it's sometimes being critical of the club sometimes feels very weird because on some level, like, we're doing really well, but it does feel like there's that little extra bit missing, that little extra bit of consistency, which is why we are, in second by double-digit points rather than being neck and neck with Liverpool or perhaps even ahead of them. So, yeah, that's going to be the real question in the offseason, which is weird because it's early April. We're already talking about the offseason, at least as far as the Premier League goes, because, of course, all of this is targeting towards Tuesday and just the massive game we have there. You don't want to say the season comes down to Tuesday, but I think we have to win. I feel like if we are going to advance in this tie, it is not going to be because we won in the Bernabeu. If we win in the Bernabeu, it would be fantastic. It'd just be amazing, obviously. But we have to go in. We have the home game. If we go into Madrid tied or behind, it's just hard to see. So it puts a lot of pressure on that game. I think we have the talent to do it. Obviously, I'd feel a little better about that with Gabriel as the other center back next to Saliba. I think we have the talent to do it. I think we have if Saka's really back, Martinelli, the way he played this week, I was really impressed by. There are some good pieces. There are some possibilities. Madrid's the favorite, but we can do this. We can do this.
Yeah. All right. So who is your player of the week?
A lot of interesting choices in this one, but for me, I have to say the player I was kind of most impressed by, at least of the bits I saw, was Gabriel Martinelli. I came away really impressed. I thought the way he played, I thought especially Fulham, he was dangerous. I thought he continued to be dangerous against Everton, and not so much the quality he was playing with, although obviously that was there, but it's the attitude. You could see, especially because he knew he had the Fulham's right back he had on skates, man. He had that guy. But even against Everton, he was driving, he was taking shots, he was creating opportunities. I mean, it's not even so much, we've talked about this too, right? There's the mental side of the game. It's having the confidence and feeling confident in yourself, not just to make a good play, but feeling like you can do it and giving you the confidence to say, yeah, I'm going to try that. And I think that's, to me, watching that's what I saw a lot of out of Martinelli this week, which makes me feel very good going into the one game that matters as opposed to the two games this week, which, especially having gone through them, we probably won't remember much of these games at all going forward.
You sniped me. So I fully endorse your selection of Martinelli. He was going to be my pick. And for all the reasons that you said, I have to just emphasize again, that heel flick to Saka's header was just amazing. A beautiful moment of skill, but still representative of how well he'd been performing in that game and continued to perform against Everton. So if I'm trying to pick somebody else, the biggest problem is just the degree to which the sides were rotated in the Everton match. Makes it hard. So many of the people who were so good in the Fulham match, we didn't see much, and they weren't necessarily on the field enough to have too much of a contribution against Everton. So just going down who I might pick, Marino had contributions to both goals in the Fulham match. That was a good match for him. He did some good things against Everton. I don't think enough for me to really single him out in the Everton match, but not awful. You could pick Saka because he came back and immediately scored a goal. Like, that moment kind of carried the week emotionally in a way for me. But I think ultimately, who I'd like to pick, at least for the Fulham match, would be Jurriën Timber. He had a really good match, not only on defense, where that's his ostensible role, but even in Fulham's end, he was key in keeping the ball moving, getting it back from them. There were multiple times where he managed to initiate a turnover and get the ball away from Fulham and kind of keep the attack going. I was really impressed by him in that match. And by the way, quick diversion, digression on the topic of Timber. I did look up how to pronounce his first name a few weeks back, because there's the ambiguity. Is it Urian or Jurian? And I found an interview with him where they asked him the question, and he was being all coy like they do sometimes, call me what you want to call me. It's okay. Either way is fine. But they kept on sticking with it and no, seriously, what does your mother call? And apparently it's his mother calls him one thing, but other people call him another thing. But I think he landed on, you can call me Jurian. That was ultimately what he landed on. So that's what I'll stick with.
I do remember hearing at some point it was Jurian, where they pronounced the J, and as opposed to that we sort of said Urian for a while.
Right, which in Dutch that is a common thing. Jan is a very common Dutch name. I think the J does become a Y a lot of the time.
I do think also Timber is another guy for me who we talked about Gabriel as a candidate for Player of the Year. I think Timber's contributions to the season have been, considering he missed all of last season with an injury, and for how much he's played, with Ben White's injury, I think, that's a lot. I think it really needs to be recognized at points, and we'll probably do that as we get closer to the end of the season and start talking about season recap stuff. But Timber, I think, deserves a lot of credit as a season-long key player.
Yeah, definitely. And yeah, I felt it right from the beginning of the season. That it's like, wow, this is what we were hoping to get out of him last season, definitely. But again, in Everton, he was kind of anonymous. Like he was only on for like half an hour or less. He didn't play the full match. Didn't really get a chance to do much. Saliba caught my attention in the beginning of the Everton match. He had some key plays, and I was really keeping an eye on him in the absence of Gabriel. But ultimately, I feel like I have to pick Merino. Given like I'm excluding Martinelli from my selection pool. Merino, contributions to 2 out of the week's 3 goals, played 90 in both matches. Like overall, like had a strong enough performance in Fulham to carry him through a less outstanding Everton performance. But even Miles Lewis Skelly, like aside, like I would consider him had it not been for giving up that penalty. But I mean, do you remember that run that he made before he got fouled at the top of the 18-yard box? Just a swashbuckling run, like really, really better ball handling than you'd ever expect a defender. And I realize that his background is largely in being a midfielder, but a way better run than you'd expect a defender to make. Like just ball handling skills, just outmaneuvering. What's his name? The guy who looks like he belongs in a Russian heist movie or something.
Well, on Everton, you're gonna have to
Tarkovsky.
You're about to say you're gonna have a couple guys to pick from. Yeah, Tarkovsky. We did settle on the fact that we thought the keeper Pickford looked like the bad guy from an '80s business movie. Like he's definitely got that. It's the slick back hair gives him that Wall Street kind of look.
He annoys me. When I see him playing for England, even like he just seems like he's always angry, and I don't like him. The personality that I imagine he has from the limited amount that I see him on screen, I don't like him.
That's just because we love Aaron Ramsdale.
That too.
That's really what that's all about.
But yeah, so I'll give it to Merino. Meanwhile, before we sign off, we were talking before the show, and apparently, in talking about this being the last time that Arsenal, at least the senior men's team, is going to play at Goodison Park, kind of a farewell match there. You mentioned that there have been other talks about replacing Goodison Park in the past, but didn't pan out, and some to interesting and comical effect. What was that you found?
Well, so, I mean, we should point out that Everton, as we said, this is our final trip to Goodison Park. Everton will be closing it, at least, although apparently you said maybe the women's team might play there, which, cool.
They mentioned that during the broadcast as an unsubstantiated report, but yeah.
But anyway, they have a new place, looks nice in the pictures anyway, set to open for the start of next season, so they're wrapping up the final one here at the old ground. An old stadium too. I think 125 years old originally. Obviously been renovated a couple times, but at a certain point, it is fair to say they're willing to look for something a little different. So apparently, and we checked the date on this. The story came out March 30th, not April 1st. So we feel good about this. Apparently, there was a proposed plan about 15 years ago. That Liverpool and Everton, which by the way are the stadiums, I actually didn't realize this until seeing the picture. The stadiums, Goodison Park and Anfield, are within walking distance of each other. Like they're on opposite sides of Stanley Park, which is a big public space in Liverpool. I didn't realize quite how close they really were to each other. But the proposal was to take a site right next to Anfield, where Anfield is currently, and build conjoined stadiums. Not a shared stadium in the model of the San Siro, like in Italy, or the MetLife Stadium. I almost said Giant Stadium, but that's what it is. But yeah, in the MetLife Stadium in New Jersey. But in fact, 2 stadiums with a hotel in between them.
Oh, that's
as well as I think the team's offices would be in there as well. And it's just such an interesting idea. It ultimately never went anywhere. It was sort of like a proposed idea thrown out there. But what a fascinating idea that was! It's just I
can't imagine that's ever been done anywhere else. It's strange. I mean, why do that instead of a shared stadium? Like, is it that common for them to both have home games at the same time that they couldn't plan around it?
Well, no, and I think they will not play home games on the same day. I think
just for traffic flow reasons, probably.
Oh yeah, I don't think they'll even do it on the same weekend. And there's traffic flow. There's police presence. I mean, you'll see this in a lot of places. City and United will not play on the same day. Arsenal and Spurs won't play on the same day, generally. Like, there's a lot that goes into that. You see it especially in Europe. where they talk about how they stagger the games for the different, in European competition, where the way they stagger the games has to do with who is playing, who is playing, who else is in, what times, and where does everybody fit in. So, in that sense, it is kind of interesting. I imagine part of it, from the sound of it, was the architect kind of throughout the design there. It's like, wouldn't it be cool if, it is interesting. I mean, Liverpool and Everton have two incredibly long histories as being separate and very distinct and rival clubs. So the idea of them sharing a location is a little tougher, and yeah. I mean, what they were talking about was that the Liverpool stadium would be slightly larger, but the Everton one might have a roof. So they'd have different things that would differentiate them slightly. I mean, in the end, I think it was, and as the article kind of concludes, it was always a bit of a weird, throwing spaghetti at the wall kind of a solution. I don't think it, and Liverpool has since then, I put a lot of money into renovating Anfield, which apparently has been, the renovations are very well done. And the new Anfield is a much better place than it was when the current ownership group took over. Everton with Goodison Park, I think because of its size, because of its location, some of the infrastructure, I think in the end, a new stadium made more sense than trying to renovate it. And it was a long struggle to find a good location and all of that. So, it sounds like this was never really something that it was ever really on the table to happen, but the pictures are kind of fun to look at, weird and fun to look at. So,
well, like you said, if nothing else, just scroll through, because you mentioned this, as we're getting ready to record. So I haven't read it, but I did scroll through and look at the pictures. And yeah, that is fascinating when you see just how close Goodison and Anfield actually are presently to each other. It's kind of interesting. So
yeah, I mean, our point of reference is being outside New York. For you outside New York City, the Yankee Stadium and Citi Field where the Mets play. I would not walk the distance between.
No, they're in different boroughs. Yeah,
they're complete. Yeah, there's a giant bridge between them. It's
and not immediately so. Yeah.
Yeah. But the idea you could just walk across the park like that, and I have no idea what Stanley Park is like as a neighborhood. I'm not going to pretend to, maybe walk. Maybe that's not a good area to walk. I don't know. I'm sure it's fine. I'm just saying this out of ignorance. I was shocked to see just how close they really were to each other. That was, but I never really looked at Liverpool. I've never been to Liverpool. I never looked at Liverpool geographically.
Right.
I have been, as I said, I've walked outside of Highbury. I know where it is relative to, say, Stamford Bridge or Craven Cottage, or even to a certain extent, Tottenham, White Hart Lane, or what was, Tottenham Stadium. They're not, I wouldn't do, it's a bit, the distance is a bit more than that. Let's just say
that.
So,
all right. So what's up for next week?
Right. So, yeah, there was a game on Tuesday. We may have talked about it a lot. We're going to keep talking about it. First leg, Champions League quarterfinals, home against Real Madrid. That is on Tuesday. Paramount Plus for those of you watching in the U.S. And then, this Premier League schedule is still going to happen. After that game on Saturday, we have a home game against Brentford. And that will be on NBC if you're watching in the U.S.
Yeah. So thanks for joining us at Gooner U. If you're watching on YouTube, you can also listen to our show on Apple, Spotify, and some other places. If you're only listening, try watching us on YouTube with a link in the show notes. Your homework for today is to go watch one of our Big Green shorts, especially if you use TikTok. Our numbers were frustratingly low, and I'd love to boost them a little bit. We record the show using Zencaster. If you'd like to try it out, you can support Gooner U by signing up using the link in the description, which also has links to everything we talked about and our social pages. Again, my name is Dove, and you can find me on Twitter at Dove Frankel. With me, as always, is Keith, and you can find him in a pub watching Arsenal matches.
And once more, a happy St. Totteringham's Day to all who celebrate.